transition into the main feature, which is the panel discussion. So I'm going to ask the praise team, thank you for resting your feet. And we're going to ask the supplementary praise team to sit behind the panel. So I'm going to invite the members of the panel to come right in and take your seats. I'm going to invite the panel. So I want you at this time to put your hands together. Sirs Ebanks and Ebanks Wills for gracing us with their presence. I do know that they have another appointment, so they'll be leaving soon. But we are so grateful that you could have slot us in this afternoon in the rainy weather in West Bay. All right, thank you so very much. Appreciate it. All right. While the panel is getting ready, while the panel is sitting and getting ready, I'm going to invite Olivia. At this time. Olivia is going to start us off with a poem. I'm not sure if it was written by Tanique, but if I would not be surprised. So Olivia, thank you so very much.
You may see me as inferior. You may see me as insignificant. Through your eyes, I may be a punching bag, a log, a bat, a wall, but I am human. When you look at me, you instant fear. When you come close or draw nigh, I am scared. In my sleep, I cry, even when I'm awake. Every step I take, I am overwhelmed with despair. I stop and I ask a question. Why, oh why? I am just a girl. I am just a boy. I am just a man, a woman made by God's hand. Please listen. This is not God's plan. They hit, they kill, they stab, they whisper unkind words. They mock, they jeer, they show no care. Heartless souls, instantly constant fear, wanting to give up because hope seems nowhere near. Feeling lost in a world I call my home. Scarred by words, torn by phrases, marked by sticks, bruised by hits. You call me names, you instill pain. Tears fall from my eyes. Do I live or do I die? You tease, you taunt, you even flaunt, boasting and jeering. Are you hearing? These are the scars. These are the marks on our hearts, on our faces. Open wounds, broken bones, lonely souls that need mending. Do you realize the pain you're feeling inside? Do you realize the impact you have on our lives? Do you realize that we are humiliated, tormented, and rejected? Do you realize that we are hurting? Are you hearing? Today we take a stand, boldly, confidently. Yes, we can. Yes, we can take a stand. You may try to hurt, but our answer is no. You may think about taking your life, but our answer is no. Stop! Listen! Enough is enough! Let's flip the coin. Let's turn the page instead of hurting. Show love instead of influence. Uplift instead of abuse and violence. Extend care instead of taunting. Why not cheer? Are you listening? Are you hearing? These are the actions our world should embrace. These are the actions that will make our world into a better place. So today, let us stand. Let us say no. Enough is enough. Violence is not the answer. Are you listening? Together, let us take a stand.
Thank you, Olivia. Wow. And Olivia, where Olivia? Come here, come. First question to you. Yeah, I knew you were going to say principal of Georgetown Primary as a student, but let me just promote that she was nurtured at Cayman Academy first. Olivia, how old are you, Olivia?
8.
You're 8 years old. I'm super proud of you. Thank you so very much. Come on, give it up for Olivia again. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you. Let me just, at this time, say, guys, for a child to stand in front of us and to not read, but recite such a long poem with such substance, it is marvelous. I thank the panel this afternoon for joining me. I got some bios, but if you know Camille well, I'll just ask the panelists to introduce themselves. I think each one should have a mic, so I'm going to ask them, starting on my left, to introduce yourself, and then we'll conclude with you, Pastor Kendall.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sophia Chandler Abbey, and I'm a psychologist with Health Services Authority. My day-to-day placement is at the Multi-Agency Safeguarding Hub, or the MASH. And so day-to-day, I'm dealing with issues of violence and abuse. It is my honor to be here with you this evening in an activity that's preventative in nature. Sometimes we wait until something has happened to do something, but all of the preventative measures that we put in place, all the preventative opportunities that we have are incredibly important. So thank you for having me.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Renetta Pulsira, and I'm a social worker with the Department of Children and Family Services, specifically the Child Safeguarding Team. And most people will know it. We work closely and we are part of the MASH, the Multi-Agency Safeguarding Hub. And it's an honor to be here this afternoon to be able to share some of my knowledge with you. And I look forward to interacting. And I hope that we will have a very effective communication happening here, back and forth. We're not just here to speak, but we're hoping that everybody can become involved. So I look forward to the engagement throughout the afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Most of you might know me from Savannah, but my name is Janice Beckford. I'm a medical doctor at the urgent care at the Health Services Authority at Georgetown Hospital. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to share, although I was voluntold, I won't say by whom, for this panel, but nonetheless, I'm very happy to share this evening.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paula Gale. I'm one of the adult psychologists currently serving at HSA. I too am here to, with the hope that this dialogue that has been going on will continue. And it's our desire is, yes, to provide information, but to also educate you. And so that this conversation doesn't stop here, but it continues through the community which you come from. And one house, one person at a time, one household at a time, one community at a time. And so this is what we have to do to help each other to work towards preventing and stopping this and to end this now. Thank you for having me.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Green, Director of Prison. As the recipient of all cases of abuse, this is an opportunity for me to share with the panel and the wider group here, understand how we can facilitate treatment for people who end up in incarceration.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Cassandra Farron. I work with the Department of Children and Family Services. I'm the social work manager for the team that provides elderly services. So we respond to abuse and neglect reports of older persons who are deemed by law as age 65 years and older. And I thank you so much for this platform. Elder abuse or abuse of older persons is not something that's talked about a lot, so I thank you for the platform to bring a heightened awareness to this.
Good afternoon. My name is Pastor Andrew Campbell. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. There we go. My name is Pastor Andrew Campbell. I'm the pastor of the West Bay Seventh-day Adventist Church. I am here subbing in for Pastor Ivor Harry, our president. He would have loved to have been here, but he's unable to be with us this evening. So he sends his apologies, and it's my pleasure to join you and share a little bit of the spiritual angle on this topic of abuse.
Thank you so very much, panelists. I'm noticing that the government is quite represented here, because except for Pastor Andrew, we have all civil servants on the panel, and I'm sure, ministers, you would be proud to know that we're representing both church and state. All right. Pastor Harry is actually here. He's not feeling well. He's actually here, but he can't come out, right? But I just want to know that he is here. This evening, we're going to be discussing. I have questions for the panel. And if you have a particular question that you need answering, we're going to come to that segment as well. But we're going to kick it off with the first question to Ms. Sophia Alain. Ms. Alain, could you define for us the different types of abuse and describe how these impact learning for children and adolescents?
Yes, I can. So let me start by saying that there are a number of different types of abuse and what we refer to as modes of abuse. We typically hear about physical abuse, emotional or psychological abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, but in trying to bring a little bit more clarity, we also include things like financial or material abuse. We include things like modern day slavery, which would include trafficking and other things. We include organizational or institutional abuse, the types of things that happen within your organizational or work environment. And we also even talk about self-neglect. I'm going to stick, however, to the big four that we normally talk about, because these other modes will come out as other members of the panel speak and share. So when we talk about physical abuse, and I'm going to read the definitions just for purpose of clarity. We are talking about when one individual or one group injures the body of another person, and this can be inflicted by someone of any age. So it's not set by age, all right? And it can be within any type of relationship. As our honorable Deputy Premier indicated, when this is happening within a family, we usually refer to it as domestic violence, but I indeed like the term family violence, because we're not only talking about adults being violent or aggressive with one another, but we're also talking as well about how the violence between them impacts children, or even when children are the direct recipients of that violence. So family violence, I think, is a much more apt term. When we speak about emotional abuse or psychological abuse, we are speaking about when someone intentionally or purposefully harms the mental well-being of someone. So that can include direct comments like "you're ugly," or it can include suggestive comments where you're not as direct, but there's that kind of underhanded way of speaking to someone that affects the way they see themselves and the way they think about themselves in terms of their agency. When we speak about sexual abuse or sexual violence, we're talking about forcing someone to engage in sexual activity against their will. We're not only talking about sexual intercourse, we're talking about forcing someone to, for example, watch pornography. So in my work, I like to talk about touching versus non-touching types of sexual violence, and we talk about penetrative versus non-penetrative types of violence. So touching would obviously be something like if you force someone to kiss you, that would be a touching type of violence. If you were to say something that is sexually offensive to someone, that's non-touching, but if that person is not wanting to receive that, or if particularly that person is a child, that also is abuse. So we need to stop thinking that sexual abuse is only in a rape or where sexual intercourse is involved. There's also financial abuse, and I think it's important to specifically call that one out, because this is where finances or materials abuse is happening. Misuse or stealing someone's money or assets, stealing an identity, for example, and using someone's funds within the setup maybe of a household where one person works and the other person doesn't, and using the fact that they're not the ones going out and bringing in money to force them into doing things that they really don't wish to do. And then digital abuse, I think, is another important one, which should be under the general umbrella of psychological or emotional abuse. And particularly when we're talking about children, we know there's the TikTok and Instagram and all these other modes through which sometimes the things that you wouldn't say face to face, you say and do online, and you hide behind the online environment in order to psychologically abuse someone. So the definition for that would be when we use or exert control via social media, texting, and other forms of technology. And this can even happen within a dating relationship. So, using a type of psychological abuse through a text to someone that you're seeing. If you don't do what I want you to do, I'm going to release that nude picture of you. That is abuse. When we specifically, though, think about our children, and we think about how abuse impacts them and impacts their learning, we almost automatically want to think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And for those of you who are familiar with the psychology behind that, just in short, we can't be concerned about learning if we are concerned about whether or not we're hungry or if we haven't had enough sleep. So the first, the way the triangle which sets up the theory is set, the broader base is the bottom, which deals with our physical well-being. And then it goes all the way up to things like learning and self-actualization. And those are things that we can't get to if the base is not where it needs to be. So when we think about abuse and we think about trauma, when children are experiencing these things, learning is the last thing that they have time to give proper consideration to. When they're worried about if, when they go home, dad is going to be beating on mom, or mom is going to be beating on dad, or that relative is going to be slipping into their bedroom at night when no one is there, they cannot think about math. They cannot think about English. They can't think about learning. Their behavior in school sometimes may be aggressive, and they may be finding themselves in the behavior units or always in trouble. And that's because they're trying to find a way to make sense of the experiences that they are having. The neurosequential model of therapeutics, which is posited by Bruce Perry, goes even further to say that at certain points where if children are experiencing abuse, it actually affects the development of their brain. Our brain develops from the stem, so from the bottom up, and from inside out. And when we're talking about learning, we're interested in those top or upper levels of the brain, and interested in those outer portions of the brain, which can't develop if you're experiencing trauma. So just by way of example, if you have a baby and that baby has been living in a situation where mom and dad are literally fighting like cats and dogs, you might think, well, this child won't remember this because this is just a couple months old. The child may not have a specific memory of the event, but how that is encoded in their brain is through a sense of fear. So you might find that that child is very anxious, or a sense of having to keep themselves safe, even though they don't know why they feel that way. And that again will affect learning. There's so much more to say, but there are other panelists and other questions, so I'm going to stop there. I also want to say that I have to slip out. Unfortunately, I'm supposed to be at yet another event, but I hope what I've shared has been in some way helpful.
Thank you so very much, Sophia. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate you slipping in to assist us in responding to this question. Well, thank you. So while Sophia waits for me, I'm going to go to the next panelist, is Renata. How does, I think Sophia started to touch on it, but how does abuse affect a child or an adolescent, their ability to develop the necessary skill to function in society? Can you give us some more insights on that?
Of course. And as human beings, we all internalize things differently. And it's the same when it comes to abuse, trauma, and abuse have a profound impact on children and adolescents, especially on certain skills. And one of those skills, as Sophia Chandler Aline has started to say was the cognitive skills. So we see children who are victims or exposed to abuse, we see learning difficulties, cognitive delays. The child may display thinking patterns that are typical of a younger child, lack of problem-solving ability and inability to organize and structure thoughts. And even during my own childhood, aside from my professional capacity, I can recall adults saying to adolescents and some older children, why don't you act your age, right? And not thinking that there are other things happening. So cognitive skills are definitely affected. It also impacts their emotional and psychological health. Now, children who experience abuse are at a higher risk of developing mental health disorders such as anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorders, and personality disorders. Unfortunately, it goes beyond that. Their self-esteem and identity as a whole is affected. Now, abuse can severely damage a child's self-esteem and sense of identity, leading to chronic low self-worth and difficulties in forming a positive self-image. This also leaves them open to being easily influenced. So it goes beyond just certain parts. It's every part of the person. Developmentally, we're looking at cognitive learning, identity, everything, every part of them. Their social skills are also affected. So abuse often leads to difficulties in forming healthy relationships, resulting in poor interactions and social withdrawal. Because as individuals, as human beings, we learn by what we see, we model. And that will definitely affect how we relate to other persons. Now, we also see their emotional regulation being affected. So, abused children often have trouble managing their emotions, leading to issues like anxiety, depression, and aggression. And we often see this a lot in school. Persons would be able, a lot of school counselors would send us and saying, hey, we're noticing X is not behaving as they usually do. During playtime, they're really aggressive with their peer group. Also self-management, the inability and stress from abuse can disrupt routines and hinder the development of self-discipline and organizational skills. And we also see their adaptability skill being affected. Now, chronic stress from abuse can make it difficult for children to adapt to new situations and cope with changes. Now, these impacts can have long-term consequences affecting academic performance, social relationships, and the overall well-being of the child. Now, as an advocate of child safeguarding, I can't end without saying that if anyone here has a suspicion or a concern that a child may be abused, you can do two things. If you can make a phone call to the MASH, or if you don't want to make a phone call, you can send an email. And you can do that by emailing directly to mash@gov.ky, or you can call at 945-0545, and you don't have to give your name. You can just do it anonymously. But yes, but it's very important that even if you suspect, that you share that suspicion, because it can lead to protecting that child and stopping abuse. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much for sharing and for those information. Dr. Beckford, and let me just clarify, ladies and gentlemen, let me just clarify that the The Beckford in her surname is directly related to mine because she's my blood sister, my only sister, the prettier one. I was going to say the prettier one, but she's the prettier one. But Dr. Beckford, victims of abuse are usually tight-lipped, and I think you started to touch on it later, about it for various reasons. What are some of the signs or clues that would make you as a medical doctor suspect that one of your patients is experiencing domestic or any other abuse?
Okay, let me start. I'm going to break down your question. Let me start by looking at the very first statement of the question, which speaks to women. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to just take this in a very unidirectional way. I'm talking about a relationship where one partner is abusing the next, okay? So there are three main reasons why that victim would remain quiet. One, they're embarrassed. You know, a lot of women who end up being involved or being victims of domestic abuse are women who said, this could never happen to me. And when it does, it's very embarrassing and they don't want to share this with anyone. The second reason why women may not speak up is because they're in denial. Many relationships that are affected by domestic abuse are relationships that started with what we call love bombing. And love bombing is a strategy used by men who we would refer to as narcissistic, who pick out a target, and unfortunately it's usually women who are very nurturing, very caring, and they appeal to them by making them feel as if they are the most important person that they've ever met in their entire life. So they will laud you with compliments, they will bring you gifts, they will tell you that you are the best thing since sliced bread. You are the only woman I see who I could ever call my wife. Okay? So that's called love bombing. And it is a very, very subtle strategy because women, as women, we want to feel that we're just that. We are the person who is going to make this person's life totally different and we're the answer to their prayers. And when women are treated that way, it sort of becomes addictive because the kind of emotions that it surges, you know, it produces a hormone called dopamine, which is the hormone for addiction. You kind of want it again. So when the tables turn and their partner becomes violent, they're still looking for that person to resurface. So they're in denial. They don't accept what's going on because this is not the real him. I met the real him and it's in there somewhere and we just need to pull it out. The third reason why women will keep quiet is because they feel hopeless. So they're at the point now in the relationship where they're like, if I leave, where do I go? What about my children? When he finds my mother, because he knows where she lives, will he shoot her with the gun he's been threatening me with? Okay? And these are very real circumstances. So they feel like there is no way out. So they don't talk about it. And the only way, unfortunately, that someone who's a victim of domestic violence is going to get any help at all is if they break the silence. Because nobody will know unless you tell them. Okay? And there are certain cues, you mentioned cues and behaviors that may make me as a medical doctor pick up. So it's usually, it's most commonly related to physical abuse. So I may see a patient who comes in and she has a black eye and she has a bruise on her face and she's black and blue on this arm. Over here, the black eye is over here, the bruise is over here, and there's another bruise down here.
but she hit herself in the door. It just doesn't add up. The injury does not add up to the story. And that's when a red flag will go off in my head. Because I would like, you know, if something is coming towards you and it's coming towards your eye, what's the first thing you do? You're going to cover your eye. It doesn't matter which other part of your body gets hit. You're going to cover your eye. So if you're seeing a doorknob, not you going to the doorknob, but the doorknob coming towards you, you're going to turn away. There is no way a doorknob is going to hit you. Okay? So if the story doesn't add up to the injury I'm seeing, it's a big clue for me. I've been working in primary care for the last 15 years. And one of the advantages of working in primary care is that you develop a relationship with your patient because you are who they come back to. If they go to a specialist for their heart, they're going to come back to you. If they go to a specialist for their lungs, they're going to come back to you. And after a while, after building a relationship with them, you kind of know who they are. You know what their normal personality is. And if she's becoming withdrawn, you know, she starts to say something and she hesitates, that's going to be my clue to stop what I'm doing. You came about your blood pressure, but let's leave the blood pressure right now. What's going on? And that will help them sometimes to break the silence. Sometimes it doesn't. And if they don't open up and share with you what's going on, unfortunately, I now have to be very careful in how I approach it because I don't want her to leave and not come back ever. And if she sees that I am now a threat to what she's trying to stabilize, she may just never come back. And I may just hear of her on the news or miss her in the newspaper, unfortunately. But I have to be careful how I approach victims of domestic violence for that reason. Because you have to be careful how you tell them. You know, a lot of us will say, why doesn't she just leave? Why doesn't she just go? But it's not that easy. It's not that easy. She needs to have a plan. She needs to have an escape plan. She needs to have a run bag. Okay? She needs to know where she's going to go. She needs to have money. You can't survive without money. Okay? And there are various strategies that you can help women to get money. A lot of times their abusers are very controlling. They're usually very controlling individuals. And so they will take them shopping. They don't give them money to go shopping. I'm going to take you to buy clothes. I'm going to take you to buy food. And what some women will do is actually go and buy and return. So they'll get some cash in their hands and they find somewhere to hide it. Okay? But the most important point that I would want you to leave with today is if you identify someone who you suspect is a victim of domestic abuse, don't just approach them and tell them what to do. You find a way to get them to open up to you, because if you are the one who's pointing out to them, they may just go deeper into isolation. But if you can find a way to get them to open up to you. In fact, I saw a movie recently where this girl was clearly in denial. She was a victim. And her best friend actually wrote a list of what she saw her husband doing to her that she didn't even really identify as abuse. You know, and it was after they parted ways and she started to read all of the things, all of the observations made by her friends that made her realize, if you can find a way to even make a list and present it to her, don't tell her it's what she's going through. Ask her how she feels about the list. You know, let the idea that I need help come from her.
And I think that's going to be the most effective way to start, because it would just only be the beginning, just to start. I don't know, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, Camille. I don't know how many people know that the Cayman Islands has a crisis center. And they're open, they're 24/7, 7 days a week. You can access them. And I'm going to give you the phone number. I need my glasses. The phone number is 943-2422. 943-2422. And this is a resource that is available to everyone in the Cayman Islands. Oh, I said it was the last thing, but I want to say one more thing. Sorry, may I? One more thing.
Go ahead.
I don't know what the statistics are, unfortunately, for Grand Cayman and Cayman Islands. But the latest statistics on domestic violence in the U.S. is that a woman, that 20 women are abused every minute. That's one, 1, 2, 3, another one, 1, 2, 3, another one, 1, 2, 3, another one. Okay? So this is something that is more common than we may even think. And it may just be something that is right next door, if not with you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Becker. And I knew that would have gotten a round of applause because that just resonated with me deeply. Dr. Gale, can you elaborate on how domestic violence, domestic abuse affect the family relationship?
You know, this is just to add to everything else that has been said before. I want to just add to the statistics in Cayman, and Edward took us before, with the amount of the reported domestic violence in 2021 is the statistics I found, and there were 1,735 for that year. So it is a lot for this little island.
And those are reported.
Those are the reported cases. Because as Dr. Beckford was saying, you know, many go unreported, many go, you know, people are just so ashamed to disclose what they're going through. But I just want to give you to continue with this conversation. What is said is that domestic abuse is also called domestic violence, which you now are relabeling it as family violence, right? Relationship abuse or intimate partner violence. And it can be defined as a pattern of behavior in a relationship that is used to gain or maintain control or power over an intimate partner. Domestic abuse is often referred to as the hidden crime because it occurs primarily within the home behind closed doors. It can also have, and this is why it has such a tremendous impact on the family. It's a very complex and complicated situation because, as Dr. Beckford was saying, you know, the things that come with reporting or disclosing what is happening within the family unit can come with it with a lot of shame. But one of a primary thing that happens when this is taking place, along with, you know, the poor learning and you know, the dysfunction in the society, is that the whole family unit becomes so dysfunctional, and parents who are supposed to parent can't parent the way they're supposed to. You find that, you know, because now parents don't have difficulty, you know, they're trying to sort through their own issues, and they can't even concentrate to raise their children in the way they're supposed to. So the boundary lines between parenting and other, you know, the way they relate to their children becomes very blurred and dysfunctional. It also notices that parenting styles may vary depending on the needs of the individuals, and they're very inconsistent. So 1 minute, depending on what, and you know, I know that
the emphasis could be and has been on women. But the truth is that men are victims of domestic violence as well. But because it's so much more shame for a man to say and to speak out, there's more silence with the male. But there is that. But we find, and what happens if there is, when the individual, and usually when the men they feel that they are marginalized, they're being nagged at and constantly spoken down to, that's when aggression can become used and things turn. So there are some things that happen, that the psychological effects that takes place on individuals who are constantly in an environment that is, full of violence and aggression. The psychological effect brings on the different stress disorders. So you'll have, high anxiety, as was discussed before, and depression, and also, school avoidance and other things because the person just cannot focus. As Dr. Beckford was saying, that that when people feel different areas of control that take place, it's not only about control of the house and everything else, but also control of the economic, the finances in the home. And so people get trapped in relationships because of this, and it becomes that much more difficult to leave a situation that is just not tenable because of the financial constraints and this economic dependency on their partner. So the suffering continues through, and people remain in relationships because of the different things that have been raised. And so I will leave it there.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, Dr. Gill. Thank you for that. Mr. Greaves, you are, thank you. You are the director of prisons. So, as you said in your introduction, that the abusers come to you. What are the consequences that they face, and how do you deal with it from a prison perspective?
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We usually describe prison as a society within this society. And as such, there are varying rules in terms of managing all aspects within the prison. Prisoners has a code of ethics within the system. So, what I've done, and I know this term abuse can be expanded to various areas. What we have done is put abuse into 4 main categories. And because those are the people that comes to us when you have gone to the court and you're sentenced or you're remanded. Right? And so I have sexual offenders against children, domestic violent offenders, sexual offenders against women, and other categories of abusers such as was described, violent offenders. In terms of sexual abuse against children, there is a serious code of ethics in regards to prisoners, and those becomes our most vulnerable prisoners. And as such, we are responsible for the safety of all prisoners inside. So usually, once you come in for sexual abuse of children, we keep you isolated for a period of time to ensure that you get familiar with the regime and prisoners start accepting you.
Are you therefore saying that if a prisoner, sorry to interrupt, but this is very interesting for me. So if a prisoner comes in for sexual abuse, the other prisoners might attack. That's what you're saying?
Yes, there's a high risk. That's the highest risk out of the 4 categories I've mentioned. When it comes to children, prisoners will attack you. So for a period of time, until we are satisfied that the risk level is lower, then you can socialize with the general population. So that is from a management point of view, from the prison service. Some of the aspect that those prisoners will entail from prisoners, verbal abuse, they'll go through their own internal shame and because of stigma that is attached to children abuse. Again, their movements is restricted, so until they do socialize. I've been reading on the subject, and thanks for bringing this to me, because when people come to us, we just assess them and put them. But it is very interesting in terms of what has been said today, because there are some questions that I would like to ask in terms of for sexual offenders. Prisoners are a bit more not empathetic, or they're not using that word, understanding. And what we find the reason for that is it is the justification of the prisoners. And usually we find that in most cases the sexual violence are people that are associated with each other. Domestic violence is an next interesting case for us, and I think I just discovered a bit of answer from the 2 doctors here, is that prisoners will justify why they need to. They would have harmed that person here amongst prisoners. However, in most cases, a lot of cases, the person that has been abused is a support mechanism for people in prison. So they'll bring their handings, they'll come and visit them weekly. So I sort of resort back to what's been suggested in terms of some of the reasons why women cannot leave that relationship. And person, normal abuse where you beat someone on the road, those goes unnoticed. It does not apply to the scale in terms of from a prison perspective. And that will inform also our security measure that we take in terms of this.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Greaves. Thank you so very much. At this time, we're going to give the panelists a little pause, a little break, a little breather, and I'm going to invite from the Ebenezer Church, Mr. O'Neill Duncan, to sing for us, and then I'll continue with the discussion. Let me just invite Mr. Duncan to come and do an item, and then we'll continue with the and family, it looks like.
Happy Sabbath, everyone. My son will be joining me in this song. It talks about love and how if we can show love to others, then it can be reciprocated to us. I hope you do enjoy.
To love all people in every race, and in each one way I see brotherly
the panel, elderly expert. To be honest with you, ever since I have been to Bottom East, they have a senior citizen thing. And the country has a senior citizen, and I've always seen your face and associate you with the seniors. So today, I want to ask you, what are some of the abuses that the elderly faces, and what's the impact? Thank you.
Hello? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Elder abuse or abuse of older persons is the mistreatment or harming of an older person. It can be a single act, it can be repeated acts which cause the older person harm or distress. And it also includes the lack of taking appropriate action to provide care to the older person, because then it leaves the older person in a state of neglect. So as Ms. Sophia so expertly explained the types of abuse earlier, the physical, the emotional, which includes verbal abuse, sexual, financial, and neglect and self-neglect. We see all of those with the abuse of older persons. With physical abuse, one of the things that we see as well is restraining of the older person, perhaps because of dementia or Alzheimer's, and they are trying to stop them maybe from wandering. They're restraining them and locking them in a room, locking them away. Verbal abuse, there's a lot of verbal abuse because of not understanding the changing behaviors of aging. You know, they all of a sudden see some type of cognitive decline in the older person, and then perhaps it's come on all of a sudden, and then there is verbal abuse perhaps by the family caregiver or their families. Financial abuse, we see this, I would say probably last year we started to see this a lot, where persons take advantage of older persons, their money, they have them sign over property, assets, and take them, steal them, and neglect. We see a lot of this. So this is probably the type of abuse that we see the most. Neglect of older persons, neglecting to provide for them food, water, caregivers. So those are the types of abuse. In regards to the impact that it has, so it not only affects the older person, but it can affect the family structure and the social welfare systems as well, because older persons from abuse can be, greatly injured, which may result in hospital stays or longer hospital stays, which then, affects our social welfare system, our health system. The abuse may cause some type of mental decline where they may lose their independence, so they're then more reliant on the family or family caregivers to provide to their care needs. So that affects the family. They may have to move in with family, and it may cause some extra financial stress on the family. And if there is incidences of financial abuse where the older person loses their income or the income where they have to take care of themselves, they may have to apply for government welfare assistance. So again, stressing the social welfare system. So elder abuse happens when there is not strong supports in place. And one of the things that we can do is just to learn about exactly what elder abuse is and what are some of the risk factors. So I want to talk now, please, on what are some of the risk factors that we see that older persons are becoming vulnerable to abuse. And this is from the perspective of DCFS, the cases that the social workers get. Because there's no family support, no guardian or no proxy, the old person is more vulnerable to abuse or neglect because there is nobody in place to administrate the care that they require when they can no longer do so themselves. So therefore we see that there is no care or limited care, and then we see the signs of neglect. Also, when the older person is isolated from the community, perhaps they live alone, and I know some older persons choose to live alone, or there's no frequent contact from family or friends, then they are more susceptible to people taking advantage of them. And we see this with instances of financial abuse. And there are situations of financial abuse as well where people move into the home of the older person and use their resources and their assets for their own needs. Also, no advanced care planning. So this is something that at DCFS we like to talk about, the need for advanced care planning. Advanced care planning is where we or the older person would prepare a plan for when they can no longer make decisions for themselves. So it does not have to be that you have to be old to do an advanced care plan. We all can do advanced care plans where we talk to our family or loved ones about the decisions that you would want when you can't make those decisions for yourself. Who you would want to be a power of attorney, who you would want to handle your money, where would you like to live? Would you like to live with family? Would you like to go into residential care? So advanced care planning is very important, and a lot of times we have cases that come to us, there's nothing that has been prepared on the behalf of the older person. So when situations come up when the older person is no longer independent, it may come on quite sudden, and it's can be quite a shock to the family members. So then they're more susceptible to things like verbal abuse. When the older person becomes dependent on others, perhaps because of dementia, or cognitive decline, chronic illnesses, there can be things like caregiver burnout. So if the family is
providing care for the older person or just helping to administrate care, it can be quite a burden that families are not prepared for. And we have seen things as caregiver burnout that can lead to abuse of the older person. Also, if there's already violence in the family, if the family deals with pressures and conflicts by being violent, then the older person that's in that family is more susceptible to abuse. And if there's personal problems that the caregiver has, so sometimes the family caregiver is taking care of their young family as well. We see this quite a bit. So they're sandwiched in between two generations, the younger generation of their children, and then the older generation of their parents or older relatives. And they're having to take care of both the older person and their children. It's stress on them. Perhaps they're already stressed because of financial work. So it can lead to abuse of the older person. And sometimes there's historical issues. I think I mentioned before that there may be abandonment of the older person by the family. And an example of this is sometimes there are children who say that their older father didn't care for them when they were growing up. So they feel no obligation now to take care of them in their old age. And lastly, because of the attitude of ageism. Ageism is the discrimination of older persons just because of their age. People feel that they have no value because they can no longer contribute to community the way they had before, or they're now, fully dependent on somebody else to take care of them. So, they take advantage of their money and their homes and they're abused. And I will say this about the attitude of ageism. Any of us can have this attitude of ageism. And if you have an attitude of ageism, you are contributing to the abuse and neglect of older persons, because you are also teaching it to your children or the younger generation. And not just directly that you're teaching them, but because they're observing you and they're noticing things. So we have to be able to break this attitude of ageism. And lastly, I will just talk about the reporting of elder abuse. So elder abuse should be reported to the police or the Department of Children and Family Services. Really, those are the two agencies to report to. Sometimes persons don't like to get involved, and so they may say it to their pastor or they may say it to their member of parliament, and the report doesn't get reported timely. There's a delay in it. And not only that, we can't collect the necessary information that he was here just earlier, is working on the law, bringing amendments to the Older Persons Act, which is going to talk more about safeguarding of older persons and mandatory reporting. So we're looking forward to that. I brought some brochures on elder abuse, and they should be over in that tent there, which has information on elder abuse, but also how to report, contact information, etc.
Thank you so very much, Cassandra. Thank you so very much. Just before we've addressed abuse and domestic violence across several spectrum, and now we're heading to the church, because as Seventh-day Adventists, and we're not exempt from abuse happening in the church. We're not exempt from abuse happening with our own members in the society. And so we want to ask you, Pastor Campbell, what is it that the church has in place, or how does the church deal with abuse happening in the church or abuse happening with their church members?
Okay, so basically what I'd like to emphasize is that the church does not have a separate way of addressing this part of the rest of the community. The church collaborates with the other persons here on the panel that we see here. This is not just something that the church addresses, it's something we address in the community. So when it comes to issues of abuse, it is important to talk, to open up to someone. As has been mentioned before, abuse is something that thrives in silence. In secrecy, that's where it thrives. And so to be able to open up and talk to someone who is trusted. Now, I wish that I could say talk to any church leader. But unfortunately, experience has shown that doesn't always work. Unfortunately, there are instances of persons who have said, okay, let me talk to even an elder. And instead of getting the help that they need, they've been told, listen, you can't let this get out. Because there's reputational damage, because they're people who trust and who care about the individual, and if this gets out, it'll do more harm than good. So you have to keep this. So I wish I could say, just talk to a church leader. Unfortunately, you have to be very wise who you open up to and who you talk to. Your pastor is going to be perhaps your best bet. Talk to someone you trust in your church. But if you are told, for example, keep this under wraps, you need to find someone else to talk to. All right. Also, when it comes to abuse of children, it is important that all of us understand that when you become aware of instances of abuse of children, it is not enough to say, oh, you should talk to, or you should tell. If they've opened up even the slightest bit to you, you don't even have to have a full explanation of what has happened. You just have to have reasonable suspicion that there is abuse taking place. You can make the report. You can make the report. Don't pass them on and say, oh, go and talk to you should have you talked to your mom about this? You should talk to your mom. It is your responsibility to take action. First of all, to let the children know that they are heard and understood, that it is not their fault, and that you are there in their corner, you're going to help them. So these are some of the steps as a church that we can take, and obviously, as I mentioned, we utilize the services and support that the community offers as well. We work together as a team.
Thank you so very much, Pastor Campbell. I'm sure Sister Corey, as the Women's Ministry Director, will do some collaboration so that at least the church can have structure in place to help end it now. Unfortunately, we have to end prematurely because the system is now at risk. So we're going to ask you, Pastor Campbell, if we could just all stand and pray so we can get the system plugged out, because we don't want to create damage, right?
All right, let us stand everywhere. Let us pray. Father in heaven, we thank you that you are a God of grace. And we thank you for the power of healing that you offer. There are so many of us who have been touched by abuse, directly, indirectly. Some persons may be suffering from it right now. Father, we pray for healing. We pray for restoration. Father, we want to see a change happening in our islands. We want to see a change happening in our community. And Father, we thank you that you are a God not just of forgiveness, but you are a God of reconciliation and restoration. And we're reminded the story of Zacchaeus. When you came to Zacchaeus, he recognized that it was not enough just to say that he was sorry. It was not enough just to say that he repented. He had to do something. He decided to give back what he had stolen. He decided to restore what he had taken wrongfully. Father, I pray that as a church and as a community, we will work towards healing in a restorative way, in a way that addresses these issues head on, that is not afraid to call sin by its right name, that is not afraid to help people to change. We want help not just for the abused, we want help for the abusers. We want for people who are doing this to stop. We want it to end now. Father, we pray that you can help us to recognize it is not enough just to say, I'm sorry. We need to expose this. We need to bring it into the light where you can put it to death. Father, we pray that we will see something new, something powerful, something spirit-led happening in these islands. We recognize we can't do this on our own. As much as we try, we need help from above, and so we invite you and we ask you to show up and to help us make a difference. Help us by your grace and your grace alone to end it now, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you so much, everyone. Just a quick thank you. I had a very long list of names and people